All right, welcome back everybody to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. We are going to split up the Sunday night, Monday night games. So in this episode, we'll be covering the Sunday morning games. And to kick it off, we had the Dolphins at the Commanders, which was a very, very lopsided game. All the Dolphins players we wanted to start had pretty solid weeks. The Dolphins, to mention, ended up winning this game 45-15. Tua was 18 of 24 for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He finished 19.2 fantasy points. He only played 79% of the game before they put in Mike White because they were just dominating, and there was no point in risking injury for Tua. So, I mean, it's like, he gave you 19.2. You maybe hoped for a little more, but again, he didn't even play the entire game. He probably would have gave you more if he did. We saw Devon Achane come back this game and immediately become the lead back. He carried the ball 17 times for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns, 3 catches for 30 yards on 4 targets, gave you 25.3 on 61% of snaps. I'm pretty sure every game he's actually been involved to a even moderate degree, he just goes off.
If he's that good.
Yeah, if he is healthy, we are playing him without any hesitation. He has to be in your lineup. Raheem Mostert played 38% of snaps, still had a solid fantasy day, 11 carries, 43 yards, a touchdown, 1 catch for 8 yards on 1 target, 12.1 fantasy points. We could have hoped for a little more, but it's a decent fantasy week. We really saw Jeff Wilson get relegated to the abyss, even in a game where they were up 30 points in the fourth and could have just ran the ball out. It was not Jeff Wilson getting those garbage time carries. So Jeff Wilson's the guy that's phased out. This is going to be an Achane and Mostert backfield going forward, at least what it seems like as of now. Tyreek Hill will always be Tyreek Hill every single week. Only had 7 targets, only played 51% of snaps. Caught 5 of those targets for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. Carried the ball twice for -4 yards, does not matter. 32.3 fantasy points, the wide receiver 1. And he's going to finish as the wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Easily.
Bar none.
Yeah.
No question.
And Jalen Waddle to finish out the Dolphins had a solid fantasy week. Saw 8 targets, caught 5 of them, 52 yards, 10.2 fantasy points. I mean, I thought we would see more Jalen Waddle this season, but again, that's when the Dolphins couldn't run the ball as efficiently as they are right now. When you have Achane and Mostert having the seasons they are, someone's going to take a little bit of a hit fantasy-wise, and it's been Jalen Waddle. It's obviously not going to be Tyreek.
And it's like with Tyreek, he doesn't need. He's like. He does not need much. You put the ball in his hands at almost any point in the field. Like 5 times out of 10, he can take that into the end zone, no matter where he's at. It's just ridiculous, bro. How fast he is. I mean, realistically, Brock Purdy's for some reason the favorite to be the MVP or win the MVP right now. Should be Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Should be Tyreek Hill, man.
Yeah, he is unbelievable. And the other side of the ball, things were honestly pretty ugly. I mean, if you started Sam Howell, fantasy-wise,
wasn't bad.
No, I mean, fantasy-wise, he finished better than Tua. It was an ugly week,
though. I mean, it makes sense because Tua got pulled, and it was just an absolute one-way domination.
Yeah, the Dolphins' defense the Dolphins as a whole are looking very complete right now, and Sam Howell struggled very heavily through the air in this one. He only threw the ball 23 times. He only completed 12 of those passes. 127 yards. Didn't throw a touchdown. Threw an interception. Carried the ball 4 times for 21 yards. 2 touchdowns on the ground, which is what really saved his fantasy day, obviously. Finished with 20.18 fantasy points. So if you did start him, fantasy purposes, he gave you a solid week.
Yeah, he got it done.
Yeah, Brian Robinson we saw get injured very early with that hamstring and leave the game. He was actually very efficient when he was playing. He only carried the ball 7 times for 53 yards. He had 5.3 fantasy points when he got injured. He only played 22% of snaps. So that's a bad break because
he was having a pretty good game.
Yeah, you'd assume he was at least going to finish double digits at the very least. And when he went out, Antonio Gibson got his lion's share. Did not carry it efficiently, 10 carries for 35 yards, but caught 4 out of the backfield on 5 targets for 37 yards. He finished 11.2 on 56% of snaps. He's a guy, if Brian Robinson does, miss considerable time, Antonio Gibson's a guy you can, we'll talk about him more, but he's a guy to heavily monitor because of his pass catching ability out of the backfield.
Yeah, the only thing with that is they are going into the bye this upcoming week, so it's like
he should be all right come week 15.
Yeah, Brian Robinson should be okay come week 15.
Yeah. And the receivers, 12 completed passes, 4 of those went to Antonio Gibson, only 127 yards. There was not much to go around. Scary Terry got goose-egged. Only targeted 3 times, didn't catch anything. Gave you a fat 0 in what was a very important week in the fantasy season.
And you know what? That was something that we talked about coming into this week.
We did.
How this season, Terry McLaurin is averaging his absolute lowest yards per game of his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been moving the ball. They've been having success on offense. So it's obviously the Eric Bieniemy system that is not suiting him well. I mean, as far as the rest of the season goes, they're on bye next week.
You can't start in playoffs. No,
week 15 and 16.
Yeah. And if you play in like a deep, because I know like some Yahoo leagues, week 15 is still, it's like the final week of the regular season. You cannot throw him out there and risk your entire season on Terry McLaurin. There's just a lot of guys with higher upside at this point.
I agree.
The other receivers didn't fare too well. Jahan Dotson especially. 5 targets, caught 2 of them, 23 yards, 4.3 fantasy points. Curtis Samuel led the receivers. He had 5 targets, caught 4 of them, 65 yards, 10.5. He played 58% of snaps. He was someone I had to throw into my lineup this week, and someone we'd talked about, with the buys, with injuries, a possible flex play, a 10.5 week does not hurt you. It's a solid week.
Not by any means. We saw a lot of down weeks out of a lot of players.
Yeah.
Which we will get into, but yeah, so.
Yeah, and also, just the last thing, Logan Thomas only saw 1 target, did not catch it, but caught a 2-point conversion, so he finished with 2 fantasy points. And that is it.
Yeah. So that will take us into our next game, which was the Broncos heading into Houston to take on the Texans. The over-under was 47.5, and Houston was favored by 3. They did cover, but the under hit in this one. Texans won 22-17. This was a week of extremes for a lot of fantasy players.
Yeah.
For example, we had... Now, this really sucked because we talked a lot about going into the game, how Tank Dell was questionable, so on and so forth, and they said he was playing, he played. The unfortunate thing was the play he got hurt on was lead blocking for Dameon Pierce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did not like that. There's no reason why a little slot receiver should be lead blocking at the goal line. Resulted in him getting a fracture in his fibula, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So he's out for the rest of the season. Just
a huge hit.
Gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
He was on pace, and he was going to be a league winner for a lot of people. And it really does suck. I hope you get better quickly, Tank Dell.
Yeah.
It was very fun watching him play this season. So just wanted to have a little side note on that, because while he did play, unfortunately, a lot of us did start him. He got hurt within very, very short time of the first quarter, so he did not play much, got 0 points in this game. It really sucked to see.
Yeah.
But I will officially start with Denver. Russell Wilson didn't really have his best game in this one. It's 15 for 26, 186 yards, threw 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. Now, they weren't all bad interceptions. They were just, honestly, some of them were great plays by the defense.
Yeah.
So I can't really take that away from them. But I'm also not going to crucify Russ for it. Because he was also able to run the ball 10 times for 44 yards and a touchdown, therefore saving his fantasy day, giving him 18.8 points. A start that I liked this week, and thankfully he was able to do that on the ground. So it saved me a little bit of face.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't the worst week for him. Javonte Williams remained the lead back in this one, got 65% of the snaps, 13 carries for 46 yards, also caught 3 passes on 3 targets for 24 yards, giving him a solid 10 points. The next most involved wide receiver or most involved running back was yet again Samaje Perine, but this time he only had 1 carry for 1 yard, got 2 targets, caught them both for 5 yards. So not quite what we were expecting. Yeah. I mean, it's within the realm of possibilities. We know if they get in the position where they need to constantly pass, then they're going to have Perine out there. But it was a really close back and forth game. So it was never at the point where, I mean, they drove the ball down the field and threw an interception into the end zone for the final play of the game pretty much. So, I mean, it was neck and neck the whole entire game, which is the games we like Javonte Williams in. What's the other one? McLaughlin played 15%, had only 9 snaps, still had some involvement, got 4 carries for 15 yards, and caught both of his targets for 6.
Yeah.
4.1 points out of him, 2.6 out of Perine. Nothing great. Those two are legitimately nothing more than handcuffs for Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
But who we do like at this point, and the Broncos have been playing good football. They lost their first game within the last 6 and only by 5 points. So, and it was in Houston. Going forward, I still like Javonte. Russ is a matchup dependent, kind of streamer, but we're getting to that point where you shouldn't really be streaming quarterbacks unless you're playing in a super flex league.
Yeah.
Moving on to the wide receivers. It was very interesting. So we had Courtland Sutton play 85% of the snaps. Jerry Jeudy was out there the second most, only played 70% of the snaps. So it was fairly strange. Marvin Mims out there 30%, Lil Jordan Humphrey out there 42%, and Brandon Johnson out there 15%. As far as their performances, the only one noteworthy was really Courtland Sutton. Got 2 of his 7 targets for 77 yards and a touchdown. 15.7 PPR points. We know what he does. Done. It's just fairly impressive that he only catches 2 passes of the 7 and still finishes with 15.7 points.
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy didn't have a horrible day by any means, but nothing super spectacular or special. 4 targets, caught 3 of them for 51 yards, 8.1 points. Not gonna win or lose you really anything. And as far as everyone else, I mean, Adam Troutman caught 1 of his 2 targets for 6 yards. We've talked about how we are not interested in a Broncos tight end, especially with what's Dolchich, especially with Dolchich still sidelined. We're staying away from that. Now, hold on 1 second. Did you know? Okay, it said, I'm just looking through the defensive stats, and there was an F. Moreau on the Broncos. I was like...
Fabian Moreau,
yes.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
That's such a random player.
It was...
That we know.
Yes, that we know. But it caught me very off guard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really all. I mean, Marvin Mims, we were excited for him earlier in the season, but the 1 catch on 2 targets for 5 yards is pretty much what he's been reduced to outside of his returning role. It's the Courtland Sutton show with some Jerry Jeudy appearances, and then on the ground it's Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
That's really all we need to know for that. Will Lutz made his lone field goal attempt, kicked 2 extra points, 5 fantasy points for the kicker there.
Yeah.
On to the Houston Texans side of the ball, where we unfortunately, like I said, lost Tank Dell this week. CJ Stroud was 16 for 27, 274 yards, and a touchdown. Also ran the ball 6 times for 11 yards and lost a fumble.
Yeah.
So 16.1 points for CJ. Kind of a disappointing day, but still going to the well with him. Don't really care.
Yeah.
He's been great. And even with the loss of Tank Dell, I mean, Nico Collins is still really good, if you weren't aware.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing about this, so CJ Stroud goes out for one play, and Davis Mills comes in, throws one pass, and CJ was like, yeah, absolutely not. Get me back out there. So that was pretty funny. Dameon Pierce, the revival, 15 attempts for 41 yards and a touchdown. Also did nothing in the pass game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Devin Singletary, he didn't really either. Caught one pass on one target for 4 yards and rushed the ball 8 times for 36 yards. So while we talked about the possibility of last week Dameon Pierce's snaps kind of just reflecting his slow return from injury, I think that might have been the case.
Mm-hmm.
He played 20% more snaps in this one. I mean, just to show Devin Singletary's numbers. Singletary goes from 82% last week to 46% this week. Pierce goes from 18% to 38%. It's clear which direction that this is moving in.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you had Devin Singletary, we're counting on him for the remainder of the year. That's not going to likely be a thing if Dameon Pierce remains healthy. So, yeah, 10.1 points from Dameon Pierce, a measly 5 points from Devin Singletary.
Yeah.
Now, Dare Ongumwale also got 1 carry for 1 yard. Had to throw him in there. And a 14-yard catch. Don't forget about that.
Yeah.
Now, on to the Nico Collins show, where after Tank Dell went out, there's one really reliable guy left. And he went crazy. 12 targets, caught 9 of them for 191 yards and a touchdown, finishing with 34.1 points. It's safe to say that with Tank Dell gone, Nico Collins' stock through the roof.
Yeah.
Now, with Dalton Schultz out in this one, Brevin Jordan was the only relevant tight end, and he caught 3 of his 4 passes for 64 yards. So he finished with 9.4 points.
Mm-hmm.
If you needed an emergency pivot for the tight end position, I would say that was not such a bad day.
Yeah.
He also played 75% of the snaps, with Andrew Beck, their fullback tight end hybrid, playing 40%.
Yeah.
Woohoo. There was not too much else going on in Houston. We had John Mechie catch 1 of his 3 passes for 9 yards. Saubert, the other tight end, caught his lone target for 5 yards. Beck, the fullback tight end, caught 1 of his 2 targets for 5 yards, and Noah Brown did not catch either of his 2 targets. So, yeah. We're looking at Nico Collins. We have no choice but to look at Noah Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he had a horrible game, we've seen his involvement, and with Tank Dell being out, it's obviously going to jump back to what it was. Other than that, what's his name actually made 3 field goals, surprisingly. Matt Amendola was 3 for 3 and made an extra point. So he got 10 points.
Yeah.
Go figure, right? But yeah, that's all out of this one. It was a game that we thought would be pretty good, and it turned out being pretty good. Go figure. Texans and the Broncos in week 13.
2 competing teams, surprisingly.
Yep.
But that's just what it is.
That is football in the year of 2023.
Yeah. And that'll take us to our next game, which was the Lions at the Saints. The Lions were able to hold on to this one 33-28. They were stomping on the Saints very early, but the Saints were able to claw back and make it a game. On the Lions side of the ball, there honestly, fantasy-wise, there wasn't like too much to be excited about. We both know there's one guy that we were very happy with his output, but Jared Goff had a solid game. 16 of 25, 213 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 carries for -2 yards. We love those stat lines. And then finished with 16.32 fantasy points. The Saints have a solid defense. The Lions put up 33 on them. I didn't necessarily love the Jared Goff matchup this week, but 16.3 if you happen to start him, it's not a horrible week. Obviously, we would hope for more than that. And on the ground, they were kind of stifled, at least for David Montgomery. He carried the ball 18 times for only 56 yards, but he did get in the end zone. Saw 2 targets through the air, caught one of them for -1 yard. Finished with 12.5 fantasy points, played 62% of snaps. That's a livable fantasy week from David Montgomery. You know, we can't be too disappointed with that. Jahmyr Gibbs, I can be disappointed with his fantasy week. He played 45% of snaps, but he only carried the ball 8 times for 60 yards. He only saw 2 targets out the backfield. He caught one of them for -6 yards.
That was what hurt.
Why? For -6 yards. He finished with 6.4 fantasy points. Now, he's one that a lot of people probably had to start with all the buys. And that 6.4 performance does hurt you. And it also shows that David Montgomery's getting healthy again. And it could go back to him getting the bulk of the workload. It at least seems like it's trending in that direction. Because even when he's not running it efficiently, he's still got 18 carries for only 56 yards. So that's something to heavily monitor.
I feel like we've been riding a high with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us hoping that it would last. I'm not going to go out and say like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. But when you have your head coach talking about you're willing to give a guy 20 to 25 carries a game, you have to realize that once he is fully healthy, they're going to go back in that direction.
Yeah.
It's been great what we've seen out of Jahmyr Gibbs. Well, we saw games out of DeAndre Swift that were really good last year, and they would go back to the same thing, relegating him to the pass catching back and the utility guy, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not catching passes, we know that the volume in the rush game is not going to be there. What we had those past couple weeks, like I said, it was riding a high that was not going to last.
Yeah.
It's going to be David Montgomery getting the bulk of those carries, and when they get down into the red zone,
it's David Montgomery.
In the 10, it's David Montgomery.
Yep.
As much as we hate that, it doesn't matter. It's something that we knew was going to come back, and now it has. So hopefully you were prepared for that.
Yeah, and like you said, you could ride the Jahmyr Gibbs high. He had a good 3-4 weeks where he was winning you matchups.
It was great, yeah. He was winning people weeks.
You have to be prepared for this playoff push to possibly not be including Jahmyr Gibbs in your lineup for it.
They're getting to the point of their season. They're fighting for the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's just their philosophy. They want to lean on the running back that they feel they can give all those carries.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have to get it done either through the passing game or he's going to have to score from like outside of the 20.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the number 1 target in this game was Sam Laporta. He had a monster day. He was targeted 9 times. He caught all 9 of them. 140 yards, a touchdown, 29 fantasy points even. That's week-winning numbers. That's a huge week. Sam Laporta's shown that it's in the realm of possibilities to have weeks like this, and he had another one just like this. And Amon-Ra had his quietest week of the season. He finished with 12.9 fantasy points, so it's not horrible, but he only caught 2 passes for 49 yards on 6 targets, but he got a touchdown. 12.9. We're not going to see many weeks where Amon-Ra is only getting 2 catches. He's going to get
No.
5-6 catches at least almost every single week. So this was, you could say, his down week, and it was still 12.9 fantasy points. So nothing to really worry about. And the other options, Jameson Williams caught his lone target for 11 yards, carried it on the ground for 19 and a touchdown, finished 10 fantasy points even. But again, that usage, touching the ball
So
2
limited.
times in the game, is
So limited.
not
It's
something
insane.
we're looking at. And Josh Reynolds, again, 2.2 fantasy points. He should not be rostered at this point. If you're going to choose between the two, I guess you choose Jameson for the upside,
Williams.
but honestly, neither of them are really appealing at this
Consistent
point.
enough to, no, we need consistency at this point, unless you are desperate, like need a play. But yeah, they offer no consistency.
Yeah. And Derek Carr gave another Derek Carr performance. He was 17 of 22, 226 yards. He had a touchdown, an interception, 2 carries for -1 yard, 9.94 fantasy points. He did get injured in this game, which was never good to see, especially because it was his second concussion in the past month. So that is not something we are happy to see. And it was late in the game, and when he did get hurt, Jameis came in, was 2 for 5, 41 yards. He played 13% of snaps. Be ready to see Jameis next week. There's a very high chance with a second concussion in a month that it's going to be Jameis. What that'll mean?
With that, go ahead.
No, go.
I feel like I might be saying the same thing you're about to say. So,
what were you gonna say?
Go ahead. This might hurt Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston, I don't know if you've watched, you obviously have, but for our viewers, I don't know how much you've watched Jameis Winston play football, but he's not very much a fan of checking the ball down.
He's going to chuck it.
He is a fan of chucking the ball down the field.
Yeah.
To somebody, no matter who. But, this really might hurt Alvin Kamara. So.
Yeah, it's something to heavily monitor going into this next week, but again, it does not seem like Derek Carr will be able to play next week. But he did play most of this week, and Alvin Kamara benefited from it. 14 carries, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns. 8 targets at the backfield again, 6 catches, 58 yards, 28.9.
The crazy thing was he was ruled down on the 1, and Taysom Hill gets the touchdown.
Yeah, he could have had another touchdown. It could have been 30.
Had 3.
Yeah. Could have been a 34-point week. I mean, there's not much to say about Alvin Kamara. He's an every week start, obviously. Even with Jameis, you're going to have to throw Alvin out there.
You still have to throw him out there. It's just with you have to keep the idea in the back of your mind that this very well can be a bad week.
Yeah.
But.
And Chris Olave did his thing. He only played 61% of snaps, so didn't get his normal workload on the field, but he did see 8 targets when he was out there, caught 5 of them, 119 yards, 16.9 fantasy points. Very solid week from Chris Olave. We always talk about if your receiver's giving you 15 plus without a touchdown, it's a very good week.
It's beautiful. And I have to say, with the Jameis thing, it's quite the opposite with Chris Olave.
Mm-hmm.
His value shoots up with Jameis Winston.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then the other receivers aren't even worth mentioning. A.T. Perry was out there like 80% of the game, caught like 2 passes on 4 times. It's just, they're not. Lynn Bowden was out there for most of the game without Rashid Shaheed and Michael Thomas. These other guys just aren't viable. Taysom Hill had a very solid game. Saw 2 targets, caught both of them 15 yards, 13 carries for 59 yards, and that snipe touchdown from Alvin Kamara. He finished 15.4 fantasy points, played 42% of the snaps.
I would have won if Kamara got that.
I know. I was thinking that reading through this, and I was like, Sam Laporta got 29, And Alvin Kamara basically got 29. And it's
fantasy football.
Yeah, it's insane. We saw a Jimmy Graham sighting. He caught a touchdown.
Yeah, he did.
Why is Jimmy Graham catching touchdowns and being targeted in the red zone? Why is he on an NFL roster? He just reappeared out of nowhere and said, I'll catch this touchdown and just disappear again. Sure.
Yeah, usually when you sign on a team to retire with them, you don't end up playing.
But he did.
Here we are.
Yeah. So Taysom Hill, Jimmy Graham, and Foster Moreau all got more action than Juwan Johnson, who I liked him this week. I figured, there's literally no options other than Olave, Kamara, and Taysom Hill. Juwan Johnson's going to get his run. Well, he somewhat got his run. He was out there 57% of snaps. He got targeted 3 times, but he goose-egged. He did not get a single catch. So,
yeah,
it was not a good week. And the Saints scored 4 touchdowns, so Blake Grupe only got 4 fantasy points. Again, not a good week. I'm honestly surprised the Saints scored 28 points in this game. But
yeah, it was funny. We talked about whether or not we liked starting Grupe just due to the fact that you weren't sure how much the Saints were going to score this week.
They scored a crap ton. No field goals.
No field goals. Oh my God. It was like I had him kick 2 field goals and he makes 4 PAT. Like, what the hell is going on?
You can't make it up.
Jahmyr Gibbs, 2.5 catches. What is going on?
Yeah. Lions score 33. Amon-Ra has 49 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs has 1 catch. You just don't know. You never know.
No.
You never know. But that's all I had for that one.
Well, I'm going to take it into one that I really don't have much to say. There's not much to say. The Falcons went into New York and beat the Jets 13-8. That's about all there is to it, being honest. Desmond Ridder, 12 for 27, 121 yards, 1 touchdown. Also ran the ball 3 times for nothing and lost a fumble, giving him 8.8 points. Bijan Robinson, 18 attempts, 53 yards. Yeah. Also caught 3 passes on 5 targets for 26 yards, making him the second in the receiving room. Yeah, like I said, Ridder only threw for 121. Tyler Algier ran the ball 8 times for 26 yards. CPAT ran the ball 5 times for 11 yards. Kyle Pitts, 4 catches on 8 targets for 51 yards, 9.1 points. And yeah, Bijan got 10.9 because he caught those passes along with his fairly inefficient rushing day. Michael Pruitt. Whoever the hell you are, however the hell you want to say it. Dude caught 1 pass for 20-yard touchdown, which was the only touchdown in this game. Horrible football. Horrible football.
Yeah.
I said the Jets are damn near unwatchable. They are. Yeah. That is unwatchable football. You cannot convince me otherwise. Younghoe Koo kicked 2 field goals and an extra point, giving him 8 points. And throwing up in my mouth, I will now go, I guess snap percentages don't really matter. I mean, we know Bijan's taking control of the backfield, got 75% of the snaps to Algiers, 16%, Keith Smith's 22%, Cordell Patterson's 31%.
Yeah.
Meaning they have a lot of running backs on the field at the same time. Drake London, 85% of snaps. Yeah. And the other guys don't matter. Kyle Pitts, 66% of snaps, which is good to see. Johnny Smith back at 40%, so go Kyle Pitts. Now, on to this shit show.
Yeah.
Tim Boyle couldn't make it a whole game. This time. Got benched for Trevor Siemian. So we're moving in. I don't even know what direction they're moving in now. But they did cut Tim Boyle after having him play a large part of 3 games. Don't know what's going on in New York. If I were on the Jets defense, I would just pack my bags and go to Cabo right now.
Yeah.
Because they're just out there for nothing. They're not even entertaining anybody. Now, just disgusting stuff in this game, man. Dalvin Cook ran the ball 9 times for 35 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Also, was able to lose a fumble. I can't entirely believe he got the crap smacked out of him.
Yeah.
Also caught 1 pass for 11 yards on 2 targets. He finished with 3.6 points. Now, if you want to know something really extremely disgusting, the man on the New York Jets who scored the most fantasy points, not Breece Hall.
It was Gibson, huh?
Not Garrett Wilson, but Xavier Gibson. Gibson caught 5 of his 6 passes for 77 yards, giving him 12.8 points because he also ran the ball 1 time for a yard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Garrett Wilson caught 3 of his 7 passes for 50 yards, 8 points. Tyler Conklin caught 3 of his 9 passes for 35 yards, 6.5. Breece Hall go along with 13 rush attempts for 16 yards. Caught 6 of his 8 passes for 29 yards, giving him 10.5. Thank God he was catching passes, because Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it.
Yeah.
Greg Zuerlein kicked 2 field goals. Yeah. This was a horrible game, and throwing it into the trash can where it belongs. So,
well, this next game will make Schiff a bit happier. It was the Cardinals going into Pittsburgh and beating the, I don't want Steelers fans upset with me, but the fraudulent Steelers. They beat them 24-10. And Kyler did not have a good week. I thought he would have a lot better of a week. He was 13 of 23 for 145 yards and a touchdown. 9 carries for only 20 yards, 11.8. As you can see, Schiff, Ravens fan, Marcus Peters jersey. No longer Raiders royalty, sad. Yeah, Kyler Murray did not have a good week. He was saved by 2 players in this game. The first one being James Conner, who...
Revenge.
Exactly, against his former team, just dominated. Carried the ball 25 times, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Got 2 targets out the backfield, didn't catch either of them, didn't matter. 22.5 fantasy points. He played 76% of snaps. He obviously, like when we mentioned with like a Rashad White, James Conner has no competition in the backfield at all. So it will only be James Conner getting the workload, and that's what we saw in this one. The other huge weapon in this game, Trey McBride, who is very talented. He is very talented.
Start calling that man the Steeler killer. He single-handedly, like, that drive that started from, because when they went for it on the 1, and of course Najee gets stonewalled. 99-yard, like, all Trey McBride.
Yeah.
It was like all Trey McBride.
Got the touchdown, called it back. Got the touchdown again and threw up the 2. He threw up the 2 to the camera.
How many y'all want me to score? I'll keep doing this.
Yeah.
Man, that was crazy.
He was targeted 9 times. He had 8 catches. Now I want to remind you, Kyler Murray completed 13 total in the game. 8 of them were Trey McBride. 89 yards, a touchdown, 22.9. Another monster week from a young tight end. We're starting to see... I was about to say the most exciting. Honestly, in my opinion, one of the most exciting parts of this fantasy season has been seeing some of these young tight ends. Like, we're seeing the landscape of, okay, fantasy-wise in the next coming years, Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, Kincaid, Sam Laporta. Like, these tight ends are starting to make names for themselves where next year in the draft, I mean, we'll see, it's a ways away, but these are guys that can be going top 5, top 7. Like, it's cool to see. It was not cool to see Hollywood Brown come in with a heel injury, play 53% of snaps before leaving in the third quarter with said heel injury. They did not disclose if he re-aggravated it or if it was just still bugging him. Get targeted 3 times and catch none of them in goose eggs. Terry McLaurin and Hollywood.
I've kind of been off of the Hollywood train.
Mm-hmm.
I've stated that. It's just not been a good look since Kyler's gotten back. He's had one good game, and Trey McBride is the focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like we said, 13 completions, 8 to Trey McBride. It wasn't a good day for any of the receivers. Greg Dortch was targeted 3 times, caught 1, 19 yards, 2.9. Rondale Moore targeted twice, caught 1 for 6 yards, 1.6.
Should have had another touchdown, got called back on a hold, but...
Yeah. But the Cardinals won 24-10 because the Steelers cannot score the football. So...
No.
But that is it on the Cardinals side of the ball. To go through the Steelers... It's ugly. Kenny Pickett was 7 of 10 for 70 yards, 3 carries for 3 yards, 3.1 before leaving with that ankle injury. He played half the game and only threw the ball 10 times, which is, I guess, right in line.
Bad.
Yeah, it's right in line with Kenny Pickett. He suffered a high ankle sprain, which required tightrope surgery. I'm not going to try to explain it too in depth, but it's basically when you have torn ligaments in your ankle, this surgery can help to repair that. So,
dude, I swear the craziest thing, because we were watching that game, and on that hit, it was like Kenny Pickett got hit in the head, bam, and then bam, right off.
Oh, it was a concussion.
He's concussed, and then they're like ankle injury. It's like, what?
Yeah, tore ligaments. He tore ligaments.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, that was such a bad play for Kenny.
Yeah, no,
bro, like, there's no way he was not concussed.
No.
But his ankle was so bad that the concussion didn't even matter.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he left about halfway through the game, and then Trubisky came in 11 for 17, 117 yards, a touchdown, 3 carries for 5 yards, 7.18. Again, played 49% of snaps. I think the tough part about, like, Deontay and George Pickens, and Freiermuth for that matter, is when we're looking at their fantasy value, like, we have to remember that Kenny Pickett and Trubisky, if Kenny Pickett goes out, are the quarterbacks there. It's like they can get volume, but when your quarterback...
The scary thing, Arizona's defense is bad.
Yeah, it's abysmal.
That's what's scary.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Yeah, whoopee, yay, you guys got 400 yards last week.
Yeah, no, that's a complete anomaly. Like, they don't have a quarterback that can throw for 200 yards consistently. So how are your receivers going to eat if he's not throwing 20 completions, 220 yards at least a game? That's the scary part.
Like, I will say, I genuinely, Deontay, I was a bit more nervous for, just because everything that's been going on in that locker room. Just as far as the receivers, I've been less inclined. But Freiermuth, I was big on Freiermuth this week. Arizona's been bad against the tight end, like, so on and so forth. They've been bad in general on defense. It was just like, wow.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh, nonetheless.
Yeah. No, fantasy-wise, Deontay and Pickens got it done. Deontay had 5 targets, caught 4 of them, 32 yards, but a touchdown, 13.3.
That
solid
came
week
at the
very end. And then he celebrated like he just scored the game-winning touchdown in the playoffs.
Dude, yeah, that was like...
That's a bad look.
And that's what I mean. That's what makes me nervous about those two. They're going up against... And I'm sorry but they're going up against the Patriots this upcoming week. Now, the Patriots have been awful on the offensive side of the ball. In the past 4 games, they have given up 46 points, I believe, which is the lowest in the NFL.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, exactly. To finish out the Steelers, George Pickens, 5 targets, caught 4 of them for 86 yards, 12.6. A solid week for him as well. And yeah, Pat, after last week, I expected a lot more. He played 59% of snaps. He was targeted 5 times, caught 3 of them for 29 yards, 5.9. It's a disappointing week, but again, when your quarterbacks throw for 187 yards combined, it's tough to have successful weeks. And the running backs were underwhelming as well. Najee, 16 carries for 63 yards, 2 catches on 3 targets for 14 yards, 9.7 fantasy points, played 59% of snaps. Jaylen Warren carried it 9
Couldn't get
times.
in from the one.
I know, from the one. Yeah, gosh, I mean,
Pathetic.
it is. It absolutely is. Jaylen Warren, 9 carries, 59 yards, 3 targets, caught one of them for -4 yards, played 43% of snaps, 6.5 fantasy points. So the running backs in Pittsburgh were very underwhelming in this game. And
I'm sitting them next week.
yeah, against the Patriots, yeah. Especially because, yeah, Pickett will miss. Pickett will not be
Pickett's
playing.
going 100% missing.
It's Trubisky.
Bill Belichick is going to load the hell out of that box.
Yeah, it's going to be Trubisky.
Like, if Mitch Trubisky is going to beat us over the top, Mitch Trubisky is going to beat us over the top.
Yeah.
Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, I don't see either one of them getting over double digits this week.
I agree. Completely agree. But that's all I had for this one. Chris Boswell missed a field goal. Whatever. They scored 10 points at home against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
That's all there is to say about it.
It's disgusting stuff.
Yeah.
Going into a game that was extremely fun to watch, Colts went into Tennessee and beat the Titans 31-28. Covered the 1-point spread, and also they hit the over.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the Colts, I was expecting a lot from Zach Moss. He didn't necessarily give me what I wanted.
No.
19 carries, so obviously he's going to get the volume. He did, for a portion of this game, go out. He was slightly banged up, did return after not too long at all. Still played 94% of the snaps. But, he just wasn't very efficient. He caught 2 passes on 3 targets, fortunately, for 6 yards to somewhat salvage an awful day. 7.7 points. It's not good.
No.
But there were those on the Colts who saw themselves quite high up on the rankings after Sunday. Gardner Minshew, for one, did not have a bad day by any means. He was 26 for 42, threw the ball 42 times, for 312 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did not throw an interception in this one, but he lost 2 fumbles.
Yeah.
We talked about Zach Moss. For some reason, they had the tight end Kylan Granson run the ball 1 time for 2 yards. Now getting into the receivers. Michael M.F. Pittman. I called it. This is one that I said, he had 10 points in their first matchup. They also didn't have Kevin Byard, or they also had Kevin Byard. They do not have Kevin Byard now. It was full go Pittman.
Yeah.
Now, I will admit, Josh Downs, I felt the same way about. There was a guy named Alec Pierce who felt a certain way about that. That's where I'll start. Alec Pierce caught 3 of his 6 targets for 100 yards and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I mean, have a day. 19 points, but obviously... And Michael Pittman, as I said, had an amazing day. 11 catches on 16 targets for 105 yards and touchdown. Scored the touchdown in overtime to give the Colts the win, by the way. 27.5 points for Michael Pittman. Have a day. Kylan Granson, as I talked about, he for some reason had an end around. Have I seen an end around to a tight end before? Maybe not in recent memory. But definitely did on Sunday. But yeah, he caught all three of his passes for 72 yards, giving him 10.4 points. Now, unfortunately, Josh Downs was kind of left out in this one. Had 5 targets, but only caught 3 of them for 14 yards. 4.4 points. Would have really liked to see the production from Alec Pierce go to Josh Downs. That didn't happen. He didn't get it done. We move on.
Yeah.
Josh Downs is still very good. He's still going to get targets. But yeah, this one kind of sucked.
Yeah.
To state the snaps. Now that's a bit concerning. This is the second week in a row. I mean, just being Alec Pierce has been at or around high 90% of snaps all year.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Michael Pittman. It's Josh Downs, who's been around 70, 80, played 68% of snaps the last 2 weeks. Now, for a while, we hadn't really seen that affecting. It was still, doesn't matter. Josh Downs is still the number 2 receiver out there.
Yeah.
Well, this is maybe not something that we can look at for the rest of the season, but it's a bit concerning seeing Alec Pierce being out there more, now getting more targets, now with more receiving yards. It's like, okay, it's just starting to become a little bit of a concern.
Yeah.
But maybe Alec Pierce is on some radars now. Definitely in deeper leagues, but yeah. So Josh Downs just, unfortunately, not the day.
No.
Kylan Granson out there for 34% of the snaps. So there's some real Tanner Hudson stuff going on here.
Yeah.
But no, that's really all for the Colts. Oh, actually, no, it's not, because Matt Gay kicked 4 field goals and 1 extra point, giving him 14 fantasy points. So
solid.
Have a day, Matt Gay.
Yeah.
On to the Titans side of the ball. It was not terrible. Well, at a certain point, it was for Derrick Henry owners, because he did leave this game.
Yeah.
We will be looking to see whether or not he will be playing this upcoming week, but he did leave the game and did not come back at a certain point in the game. Now, before he left, he was tearing it up.
Yeah.
21 carries for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also caught one of his 2 passes for 18 yards, giving him a total of 25 points. So Derrick Henry got it done before he went out. Tyjae Spears replaced him. Tyjae Spears is pretty good. 16 carries for 75 yards. Also caught 4 of his 6 targets for only 13 yards, but still finished with 12.8 fantasy points. If Derrick Henry is unable to go in any capacity, whether it be next week, next 2 weeks, Tyjae Spears is a must start.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. Moving backwards, Will Levis was 16 for 33, 224 yards and a touchdown. 2 attempts for 5 yards on the ground, giving him 11.5 points. I mean, we talked about the Will Levis we saw in his first start.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the Will Levis that
we'll continue to see.
Continue to see. I mean, they ran the ball 37 times.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
D-Hop talked about how the last time these two teams played, he went 8 for 140 for 22 points. Well, this game, he said, I think I'm going to do good too. I guess he just balls out against the Colts.
Yeah.
So he got 12 targets, only caught 5 of them, though, for 75 yards and a touchdown, giving him 18.9 points. Also ran the ball 1 time for 4 yards, which is where the 0.9 comes from. Chikakonkwo, I was wrong. They ran 2 end arounds in this game.
No.
To tight ends. Yeah, the Titans did it too.
Chikakonkwo had one?
Chikakonkwo had an end around for 2 yards as well.
No.
Chikakonkwo also had it says the kicker has a negative 11-yard rush, or the punter. That was just because the punt got blocked, and they ruled it a fumble rather than a block. Because by the time he had the ball, the rush was already there, so he kind of just pulled it down, but they hit it out of his hands, and so on and so forth. So he's marked down as negative 3.1 fantasy points, but it's like that's just wrong, man. Like, you don't need to do the guy like that. There's nothing he could have done.
That's hilarious.
That's so messed up. But Chikakonkwo, aside from his end around, also caught 3 of his 6 passes for 62 yards, giving him 9.4 points. Nick Westbrook-Akina caught 1 of his 3 passes for 28 yards, 3.8 We talked about Derrick Henry. I mean, not too much else went on. It was Derrick Henry scoring 2 touchdowns. D-Hop scored a touchdown. And what else did they do? Oh, Gardner Minshew threw a pick 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. That's how they got 28. They did not score 4 touchdowns. They kicked 2 field goals and got a pick 2.
Mm-hmm.
So Gardner did technically throw an interception, but it didn't count.
Yeah.
For some reason, that is kind of weird how catches, anything on 2-point conversion does not count.
No. You just get 2 fantasy points if they catch it.
Yeah, you just get 2 fantasy points or nothing.
Yeah.
There's no interception. It doesn't matter. It's weird.
Yeah.
But especially since the other team it has real life consequences. But anyways, so yeah, that was really all for this one. Nick Folk, like I said, kicked 2 field goals. Also missed an extra point because they had to bring Ryan Tannehill in to hold it. So he scored 5 points. That's really all that happened in this game. Exciting one. Colts stay alive for their playoff hopes. And we're done with the morning game.
No.
You have one more?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
It'll be a quick one. The Chargers at the Patriots.
Yeah. There are total of 6 points scored. No wonder I forgot about this game.
6-0. Yeah. It'll be a fairly quick one. Yeah.
Good Lord.
I keep saying though, the Herbert, it's no slander to Herbert. It's just he has no weapons outside of Keenan.
And as you mentioned, when you're going up against Bill Belichick, there's a possibility that Keenan might not have the best day.
Yeah.
Just as we know, he knows very well that they ain't got nothing else besides Keenan.
No, they do not. And yeah, it's 6-0. I'll breeze through this one quickly because it was just that bad. Herbert was 22 of 37, 212 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 4 carries for -5 yards, 8 fantasy points. The Patriots, as Schiff had mentioned, do have a very elite defense. Austin Eckler
has gotten back to form.
Yes. Austin Eckler, 14 carries for 18 yards, 2 catches for 9 yards on 3 targets, 4.7 fantasy points on 57% of snaps, an absolutely horrible week. I expected this one to be low scoring. I didn't think the Chargers just wouldn't even score a touchdown. I didn't think it would be 6-0 low scoring, but yeah,
What's our concern level with Eckler heading into Denver next week? Or facing Denver next week?
It's decently high. It's very decently high.
So obviously not many people are going to have these kinds of options. Since I do, I want to put it out there for you. And guillotine. My running backs are Austin Eckler, Zach Moss, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams. Are you starting Zach Moss and Travis Etienne over Austin Eckler?
If Josh Palmer returns next week, I start Austin Eckler.
Okay.
If Josh Palmer returns.
No, that's fair.
But
it's fair.
That's something we have to see. Because Zach Moss also kind of got bottled up. But he feels like a safer play, honestly. Zach Moss does.
Yeah, his volume has been
very solid.
A lot more productive than Eckler's volume.
Yeah. We'll talk about it more in the preview for next week. But
Eckler under 10 points.
Yeah, Eckler with a very abysmal performance. Keenan Allen, from Keenan Allen standards for the season, Bill Belichick did do what he normally does.
He locked him up.
Yeah, he locked him up. I mean, he had 9 targets. He caught 5 of them for 58 yards, 10.8. That's the number one receiving option, though, 5 catches, 58 yards. That's not terrible. Quentin Johnston, by fantasy stats, had a solid game, but he did drop that open. It's just in his head at this point. Like, he just...
I don't know if you're on Twitter or on whatever but you got to get off.
Yeah.
It ain't helping you.
No,
not everybody can take it the same way, and apparently, yeah, it's like, dude, like, yeah, we say like, oh, he's not good, but he's clearly got some degree of talent. And it's like, man, just get out of your own head and get out of your own way.
Yeah.
And just...
Yeah, we're not... He had a solid game. He had 5 catches for 52 yards, 10.2 fantasy points on 7 targets. Would have been 13 fantasy points if he made a very easy catch. But he's not a guy I'm trusting at all to start in my lineup. It's just not worth the risk. The same with Jalen Guyton. He only had 1.5 fantasy points. When Josh Palmer returns, both these guys are going to go back to fantasy irrelevance anyways. They're only being discussed because Justin Herbert is very good, and Keenan Allen's the number 1. You'd assume the number 2 would have viable fantasy output, but that is just not the case. Gerald Everett was targeted 5 times, caught 4 of them for 44 yards, 8.4, a decent fantasy week for the tight end. And the highest scoring Charger in the game was their fantasy defense, with 19. Just to give you an idea of how horrid this game was.
The one week we talked about where you could start the Chargers defense.
And I did. And they did good. There was a lot of defenses this week that did very good. A lot. That you normally wouldn't start.
Very bad football. I mean, Jets, Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those defenses, balled out.
You had the Chargers. You had the Patriots defense do good.
Patriots defense did that, and Chargers only scored 6 points.
Yeah.
Ugly week of football, man.
Yeah. And
for a lot of...
Yes.
Not all.
And the Patriots side of the ball, Bailey Zappi was the quarterback, 13 of 25, 141 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 4 carries for 16 yards, 7.24. Mondre.
Did Malik Cunningham play?
No, not at all.
So they just lied?
They lied. They said there was going to be packages for him. He did not play a single snap.
You can't find anywhere to get in the guy when...
You're going to play Bailey Zappi the whole game. That's what I was saying. And Malik Cunningham can't get a snap. You let Will Greer go after, it was preseason. But, why not? You're going to play Bailey Zappi the whole game? We know. Okay.
If this is with all intensive purposes, this is tanking.
This is obviously tanking.
Then otherwise but still it's like, bro, you can't even give the guy what you got.
Yeah.
You know what you got with Mac. You know what you got with Zappi.
Yeah. So
it's weird.
Mondre left this game fairly early with a high ankle sprain. When he did play,
thankfully only a high ankle sprain. That looked bad.
Yeah. He had 9 carries for 39 yards. He caught his only target for 0 yards. He had 2.9 fantasy points because he did lose a fumble. And then Zeke got his lion's share finally. Carried the ball 17 times for 52 yards. Caught 4 catches for 40 yards on 5 targets. 13.2 fantasy points. Played 69% of snaps. He was dealing with a thigh injury coming into it. And apparently he was limited today in practice with it as well. It very well could be a Zeke-led backfield next week that we will cover more, possibly in our next episode when we go over the waiver wire. We'll discuss it more, but that's something we're monitoring. The lead receiver was Devontae Parker, who finished with 10.4 fantasy points, targeted 9 times, got 4 of them, 64 yards. Juju, 2.1 fantasy points. Hunter Henry, 3.5. We're not interested in any of these guys. Only guys we had interest in were Mondre and Demario Douglas, who obviously missed this game. And now Zeke is going to garner a little bit of interest because a starting running back, possibly, is available on your waiver wire coming into next week. So we'll discuss that when talking about the waiver wire. But that is all I had, unless you had something else to add.
No.
That will do it for this episode. We appreciate anyone who tuned in. Feel free. We are very late in the season. If you're asking advice, it is probably the most important advice of the season. if you are right there on the cusp of if you make playoffs, if you don't. So feel free to drop comments. We'll make sure to get back to you quickly, and also we'll go out of our way to give you an even more in-depth answer, because the implications of some of these questions could be the entire fantasy season. So
yes, indeed.
That'll do it for this one. We will be back with our Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, Monday night, and waiver wires in our next episode, and we will see you guys there.
Yes, indeed.